I looked at the circular clock on the wall of the control room. The second hand swept past the 12. It was 1 hour, 23 minutes, and 40 seconds a.m. The exact moment the world was supposed to end. But my hand was trembling over the switch that was destined to save it. I didn't come here to watch history burn. I came to rewrite the script of the 20th century. I stood in the heart of the V.I. Lenin nuclear power station, surrounded by the hum of technology that was already obsolete the moment it was built, breathing in air that was minutes away from becoming poison. I remember the sweat trickling down my spine, not from the heat of the reactor, but from the terrifying weight of the paradox I was about to trigger. You see, history books tell you that the disaster at Chernobyl was caused by a flawed reactor design and human error. They talk about the xenon poisoning, the positive void coefficient, and the arrogance of the deputy chief engineer. They are right, but they are missing the most critical variable. They don't know about the stranger in the room. They don't know that the explosion wasn't just an accident. It was a desperate, failed attempt to save us all. I am the ghost in the machine. I am the reason Pripyat is a ghost town. And this is my confession. My arrival in Pripyat was quieter than a falling leaf. The temporal displacement usually leaves you vomiting or disoriented. But this time, the adrenaline steadied me. It was the evening of April 25th, 1986. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the damp earth of the Ukrainian spring. Walking through the streets of the city, I felt like an intruder in a graveyard that hadn't yet been dug. Children were playing near the Ferris wheel that would never officially open. Young couples walked hand in hand along the embankment, completely unaware that the very atoms of their bodies were about to be assaulted by an invisible enemy. It is a unique kind of torture to look into the faces of the doomed, to see the laughter in their eyes, and know that in less than 12 hours, their bone marrow will begin to rot. I had to look away. I adjusted the collar of my heavy wool coat, checking the inner pocket for the reassuring weight of my credentials fake. Of course, identifying me as Victor Bru, a senior inspector from the Ministry of Energy in Moscow. But more importantly, I checked the device strapped to my side. It was a pulse generator, a piece of technology 3 centuries ahead of its time, designed to silently fuse the control rod circuits and force a hard shutdown of the reactor core, overriding any manual commands. Getting into the plant was terrifyingly easy. That was the thing about the Soviet system in the late 80s. It relied heavily on the perception of authority. My forged papers, stamped with the highest clearances from the Kremlin, were like a magic key. The guards at the gate merely glanced at the red star on my ID and waved me through. Their eyes glazed over with the boredom of a night shift. I walked down the famous golden corridor, the long hallway connecting the reactor blocks, lined with golden aluminum panels. It felt like walking down the throat of a beast. The fluorescent lights flickered with a low, menacing buzz. I could hear the muffled voices of operators, the clatter of teletype machines, the mundane sounds of industry. It was so agonizingly normal. I checked my watch, 11 p.m. The shift change was approaching. The timeline was solidifying. I made my way toward the control room of Unit 4, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew exactly who would be there. Sasha, Leonid Topchunov, and Anatoly Dyatlov. When I pushed open the heavy doors to the control room, the atmosphere was already thick with tension. The room was a sea of pastel green panels, dials, and Swita's nostalgic, analog nightmare. Akimov, with his thick glasses and gentle face, looked exhausted. Topchunov, barely 25 years old, looked like a student taking an exam he hadn't studied for. They were arguing about the power levels. The reactor had been powered down too quickly, and the core was poisoned with xenon, making it unstable and hard to control. Then, I saw Guy. He was pacing the room like a caged tiger, his presence dominating the space. He radiated an aura of absolute, unshakable arrogance. I stepped forward, my voice booming with a confidence I didn't feel. "Stop the test," I commanded, throwing my dossier onto the central desk. "I am here on direct orders from the Central Committee. Conditions are unsafe. Shut it down." The room went silent. For a second, I thought I had done it. I thought the sheer weight of Moscow's name would be enough to break the chain of events. Dyatlov turned slowly, his eyes cold and dismissive. He picked up my dossier, flipped through it, and sneered. "Moscow is 1,000 kilometers away." "Kamra," he spat. "Here. I am the authority, and we are running a test, not hosting a debate." He tossed the papers back at me. I tried to argue the physics. I tried to explain the instability of the RBMK reactor at low power, the danger of the control rod tips being made of graphite. I was quoting physics papers that wouldn't be written for another decade. The more I spoke, the more agitated he became. He saw me not as a savior, but as a bureaucrat trying to sabotage his career. He threatened to have me arrested. He threatened to fire Akimov and Topchunov if they listened to me. I watched the fear in their eyes. They weren't afraid of the atom. They were afraid of the man. The Soviet bureaucracy was a force stronger than the weak nuclear force itself. Time was dissolving. It was 1:20 a.m. The test was imminent. They were pulling the control rods out, stripping the reactor of its brakes. I stood in the corner, realizing the terrifying truth. Words were useless against the inertia of history. Primera adito acts. My hand drifted to the device in my pocket. The plan B. The electromagnetic pulse would fry the solenoids holding the control rods, dropping them all into the core, instantly a forced scram, but cleaner than the AZ-5 button. It was a surgical strike. I waited for the moment, 1 hour, 23 minutes, and 35 seconds. Topchunov shouted that the power was surging. Akimov reached for the AZ-5 button. I knew that in the original timeline, this button triggered the explosion because of the graphite tips. I had to beat him to it. I had to drop the rods before the reaction ran away. I pulled the device, dialed the intensity to maximum, and triggered the pulse. A silent wave of energy erupted from my hand. The lights in the control room flickered violently. The hum of the computers died instantly. I expected the thud of the rods dropping. I expected the relief of silence. Instead, I heard a sound that haunts my nightmares, a low, grinding groan from the earth beneath us. My device had worked, but not how I intended. The EMP didn't just cut the power to the laches. It fried the sensors that monitored the core's position and temperature. It blinded the automatic regulation system entirely. The computer Scala, which might have initiated its own emergency protocols, was instantly lobotomized. The control rods, instead of dropping freely, jammed in their channels, warped by the sudden loss of magnetic alignment. I hadn't stopped the reaction. I had removed the only eyes and ears. The system had left. The floor jumped. It wasn't a vibration. It was a kick. The heavy concrete shielding caps above the reactor began to dance. I saw Akimov looking at the panel, screaming that the indicators were dead. He didn't know what was happening because I had blinded him. The steam pressure built up in milliseconds, far faster than in the history I had studied. The first explosion tore the roof off the reactor hall. The sound was not a boom, but a tearing of the sky. Debris rained down. The alarm sirens didn't, well, they couldn't. I had fried their circuits too. There was only the roar of the escaping steam and the terrifying crackle of structure failure. The roof vanished, and above us, a beam of ionized blue light shot straight into the night sky. It was beautiful. It was the most horrifying thing a human being could ever witness. The Serenkov effect, the air itself, was glowing. In the chaos, amidst the shouting and the dust, I stumbled backward. I checked my temporal device to initiate the emergency jump. I needed to get out. I needed to go back and warn myself not to come. But the display was dead. The MP, my own weapon, had destroyed my lifeline. I tapped the screen frantically, but it was just a piece of dead glass and metal. I was stranded. I looked up and saw the dust settling on my coat. It wasn't just dust. It was fuel fragments. Graphite. I could already taste the metal in my mouth, the signature of a lethal dose. The prompt radiation was tearing through my cells, unzipping my DNA. I saw Topchunov trying to make sense of the gauges. He would die a slow, agonizing death. Akimov would follow him. Dyatlov would survive, only to live in denial. And me? I was the anomaly, the variable that didn't belong. I walked out of the control room, away from the chaos, and headed toward the stairs leading up to the roof. There was no point in hiding. The damage was done. My intervention hadn't changed the outcome. It had secured it. The paradox was complete. I was the cause. I walked out onto the ruined gantry, staring directly into the burning maw of the exposed core. The heat was intense, but the radiation felt cold, like a ghost passing through me. I sat down on a piece of debris, watching the blue glow illuminate the smoke. I am the unknown man in the photos. I am the shadow in the footage. I am the patient zero of a plague I tried to cure. And as my vision begins to fade into white, I finally understand. Time is not a river you can redirect. It is a dam. And I was the crack that broke it. The story of Chernobyl is a reminder that some forces, whether they are physical or historical, are beyond our control. If this story chilled you, or if you believe in the possibility of time travel paradoxes, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button to help this story reach more people, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a journey through the unknown. And tell me in the comments, if you could go back to one historical event, would you try to change it, knowing the risks? Let's discuss it below.